Welcome to the Six Sigma Day. This second day is broken down into 4 different presentations, and this is the first. This is the entire Six Sigma Day's agenda. Again, the remote training that you're receiving is paralleling the live training. By now, this should be becoming a very familiar slide. Again, showing the relationship between Six Sigma, Lean, and process control tools. Six Sigma, you've seen this in our white belt program. I felt it's important to show you this again. Many companies call their program a Six Sigma program. You'll also understand that there is a Six Sigma methodology to solving problems. We're going to go through the DMAIC process a little bit more detail during the yellow belt program. And lastly, it's a measurement. It describes a sigma value relative to the process capability. So in future training, green belt training, we'll talk about what's the sigma value of your process. And a Six Sigma process is a process with a CPK value of 2, and it's a very capable process. Six Sigma as a program combines staffing, projects, and tools. And we're going to talk about all 3 of these, as it's very important that we bring each of these elements together to solve our problem. Relative to teams and training, when you put together a team, we're looking for people to understand what their roles would be. But even before we get into that, as we put a team together, we don't want to put a team together of just quarterbacks or just people to block or to do things, problem solve. We need a good, diverse team in order to solve our problem. So when we're pulling a team together, we need to understand what we need from a team. In this particular example that we show here, why do you think we would have 2 horses? What are the roles of those horses? What's interesting is that the reins actually only go to 1 horse. The horse on the left, it's tough to see, but the reins go to the white horse. The white horse is actually working with the driver. There's no blinders on the horse. The horse is able to look around and help the driver steer this, we'll call it a vehicle, or this sled. The horse on the right is the horse that's doing most of the work. That horse has blinders on, his head down, kind of pulling the load. Certainly the white horse is helping pull the load, but most of the load is being pulled by that darker horse. So there's teams, relationships that exist in all sorts of aspects of the world, and some of the things that we see, we may not realize it, but there's team aspects and team relationships happening all around us. When we put together a team, everyone needs to know what the expectations of the team, what expectations the team has on each of those individuals. So when we talk about team sizes, I always refer to our friends in the government, and when you put together 100 people or 435 people in the Congress or House of Representatives, and you think about the all the work that they get done. As a large group, they're going to move very, very slowly. There's too many ideas flopping around. So what do they normally do? They break into subcommittees. Those subcommittees are the ones that are really going to start to solve the problems, look into the different issues, and that's what we do with our teams. We don't take an organization with 200 people and assign a project to those 200 people. We break it down and we assign it to a smaller group of people. 5 to 7 is a good number for a team. Certainly many problems have been solved with smaller teams. Depending on the size of your team, the size of your project, team size is going to vary slightly. What happens when you have too many people on a team, and I've seen teams with 12, 13, 14 people on a team because they didn't want to exclude anyone from the department. Well, teams that are very large have a tendency to move very slowly. There's just too many ideas flopping around, too many people to bring along in the project. So again, there's a lot of problems associated, or there are, say, some problems associated with teams that are too large. You have a tendency just not to solve the problem. Um, Teams that are too small, they have a tendency to go very quickly, especially if there's not a lot of diversity within the team. There's not as many ideas that are generated by a team with a smaller size as you can imagine. They can come to consensus very quickly, but they may not get to the right solution. They may get to a solution, but not the best solution, because again, we don't have as many ideas in that particular environment. So again, just some things to worry about rather relative to a team being too small or too large. So one of the tools that you'll be using is brainstorming during your team meetings. You're going to need to vet some different ideas, some different solutions, and you're going to discuss different things. One of the things that you're going to do is try to bring the team along to come to a decision without alienating anyone, without stifling any additional future creativity. So what we want to do is we don't want to vote. We don't want, especially if you have an odd number of people on a team that sometimes can carry a majority one way or the other. We don't want to do that. What we want to do is we want to reach a consensus. And basically what a consensus provides is it provides a common direction or a common solution for the team that everyone agrees with, or at least is going to go along with, because they feel it's for the good of the team and the good of the project. How do you get there? You get there through discussion and I hate to use the word argument, but you're definitely going to be discussing things and opportunities and building on each other's ideas as you try to reach the final decision. So basically what we're asking people to do is, especially in teams, you leave your title at your door. Everyone is able to speak and bring their ideas to the table, free of criticism and judgment. The old "there are no bad ideas" or bad thoughts. You want to keep that open thinking environment. So at the end of the discussion, you're going to come up with a solution that is going to, again, be the best for the team, not necessarily the best for any one individual. Prior to going into even the first meeting or second meeting, you need to have a agenda, and it's really important that people understand what's going on within the agenda. What's the expectations when you come to a meeting. One of the groups that I worked with in one of our divisions actually did just a terrific job with teams. And what they would do is, if people they say the first meeting they came to without being prepared, maybe they gave them a pass. But if it became a problem, they basically threw people off teams. And if you're not going to pull your weight, why would you ask this person to attend a weekly meeting for a half hour or whatever your meeting was, and just get out of work if they're not going to be actually helping with that team out? So the story goes that this one individual ran across their manager during a team meeting, and obviously not in the meeting because they were thrown out off the team. Manager questioned it, and the person says, "Well, I'm not on the team anymore." And manager pushed the issue a little bit and found out why they weren't on the team, and basically made the person go back on the team, which is just a terrific thing, because not only did the team hold them accountable, but then this manager held that person accountable. Person went back to the team, said, I need to be back on the team. Well, that team didn't exactly open the doors and welcome them, this individual, with open arms. This individual kind of had to prove themselves, and actually had to take on some additional responsibilities with the team. I think they made this individual take the notes and publish meeting minutes and things like that, just to kind of send a message. And it really did send a message across that particular division. And I've conveyed that message, and I didn't really see it in going forward as much as I would have liked, but I certainly saw it in some other divisions after that. So that's a best practice, but certainly having an agenda, holding people accountable, understanding what the meeting rules are going to be, If there's a lot of sidebar things that are happening, that the facilitator of that meeting needs to, stop that as soon as possible. Meetings need to, come to a some sort of decision, and you need to move on. If it looks like you're getting bogged down, potentially another meeting needs to be scheduled with maybe a subset of that group or maybe some other individuals. And again, it's going to come down to the facilitator of that meeting and maybe the team leader deciding some of those things. Always have an agenda, always follow up with some meeting minutes. People need to understand their expectations. So when you're closing out your meeting, always do a little recap and let people know the expectations. It's about holding them accountable, and you're going to get your project completed much faster. As teams develop, they're going to naturally follow this path of development. So teams are going to get together, they're going to form, they're going to find out that there's probably a little bit of fighting, a little struggle for power. When you select your team, you can get through this forming and storming relatively quickly by selecting the right group of people. And if we know that there's two individuals that fight like brothers and sisters, really the decision needs to be made up front whether we can accept maybe only one of them on the team, or if we decide to have them both because we feel that the project is just not going to go anywhere without those two, then we need to have a sit down with them prior to that meeting just to make sure that everyone understands that we don't want to have a team that is going to be bogged down with some personnel issues. So we can do some things to kind of limit the forming and storming, at least the time in those two phases of team development. Most teams get into this norming situation where everyone understands what they need to do. They understand the terminology. They understand where the project is going, and they're basically doing all of their tasks that they're assigned. And this is a team that's performing relatively well. The last stage is this performing, and one of the examples I use, there used to be a TV commercial years ago where a group of people were throwing keys over a cubicle, out a window. Somebody got into a car, drove away. That person got to their destination. Somebody else got into the car and drove it. It was one of these things where it's like a seamless handoff of information and projects from one team member to another. And when your team gets into this performing mode, this is when you show up to a meeting and people have done what they're supposed to be doing, and it's not one of those conversations that you're having where somebody says, you did that? Well, I did that also. I didn't realize you were going to do this. And we have two or three people collecting the same amount of data or the same type of data or completing tasks. There's none of that confusion or limited confusion in that respect. People are doing what they need to be done. Somebody brings up a point and says, geez, I need to collect this. And somebody else, by the time the person's done talking, they say, geez, I thought we needed to collect it too, and I've already collected that data, and they present it. So it's a well-meshed team. It's a team that's operating very well. This is your World Series team. This is the team that's going to win the Super Bowl, and this is the team that's going to complete the project with the most optimal results. So when you're selecting your team, you want to put a lot of people that are going to help you get there on this team. So team selection is going to be, people within the department. I don't want a group of all managers. I want people within a department that are actually performing the roles and the job functions relative to this project. I want somebody from the quality department. I want somebody from the engineering department. If I'm working on something that affects equipment, then I probably want to bring in somebody from the maintenance or facilities, especially facilities if we're relaying out a particular department or area within my department. I want to have them as a resource. So think about the people around your project, and think about a diverse group, maybe some second shifters or third shifters. I've even brought in customers and suppliers to meetings and to teams. So think about people outside your area that may have a nice fresh set of eyes. Another example would be a person that used to work in the area that's maybe working in the area that this department feeds. So they have an idea of what's happening in both departments. So again, just another opportunity to get your team through these different phases of development. So we have forming, storming, norming, performing, and I threw in this last one, rewarding, because all too often I see teams that go off and do wonderful things and they're not recognized for that. So I truly believe that teams need to be recognized. Successful teams need to be recognized. If a team doesn't achieve its objectives, there shouldn't really be the parties and the celebrations and the awards and whatever your organization is handing out for successful projects. This is not mini kicker soccer where everybody gets a trophy. Rewarding should be based on performance, and a team that has successfully completed their project and their objectives should be rewarded. Now there's other teams that may not complete all of their or achieve all of their goals, and they probably should be recognized, but to a lesser extent. So don't miss the opportunity to reward your team, and you're going to send a message that is going to allow other people, or at least encourage other people to join a team, seeing that they are being rewarded above and beyond your reward is that you have a job. So here's our team exercise, and it's going to be difficult as a facilitator to actually be part of the exercise, but what we're going to do for you is we're going to give you a little bit of information here that's going to help you conduct a team exercise, which is something I do prior to projects and also prior to Kaizen events that helps bring the team together. So if you've got a group of people within your department, even if you don't have a project to work on right now and you want to just go through this exercise, it's actually a fun thing to do. It takes about a half hour or so. You pull your group of people together, 5-7 people, and you're going to have them each fill out one of these worksheets. There's an individual worksheet on an exercise called Lost on the Moon, Lost in the Wilderness, Lost in the Desert, or Lost at Sea. So have the individuals read the description, and then what they're going to do is they're going to rank anywhere between, I think it's 12 and 15 on these items, and they're going to put a number next to each one of those relative to how important that is for the particular situation that they're in. Everyone's doing this individually without the help of anyone else. Once they're done, we put their names on their paper, and we bring them together as a single team. When we do this as a single team, we're asking them to take a second sheet of paper. Don't change their answers on their first, and we're going to ask them to make these changes or rank these items, but come to a consensus as a team now. And you're going to rank those 15 items. How they decide to do it, whether they start at number 1 and go down to 15, or start at the least important and rank them upwards, whatever methodology they use, but we're going to give them a little bit more time. The individual exercise may take about 10 minutes. The team exercise may take about 15 minutes. They're already familiar with what the items are, so now it's just a matter of ranking them as a team. I'm going to talk a little bit more on the next slide about the conclusions and how you would rate these. So here's a recap of how the situation is going to play out, this exercise. You're going to give these individual worksheets, which is the one on the left, to each of the individuals on your team. They're going to fill this out independently after reading the instructions. The second worksheet is in the middle. That's going to be done as a team once they're done with the individual sheet. They've got their name on the individual sheet. They're going to use that as a reference. They're not going to change it. We're not going to give them the expert ranking or understand their difference until after the exercise has been completed. So each of the individuals will then get together as a team. And if you're doing this in a large group, and I've done this in many times with in yellow belt and green belt training. If you pull say you have 16 people in your class, you can set up some teams with 3 people. You can set up some teams of 4, 5, and 6. What's interesting is I had a class of about 24 people. I had 3 individuals, all engineers, that I put together. They're all males, about 35 years old. I think they finished the team exercise in record time, and their scores were almost identical. It was really funny. They must have had nothing to talk about because there was almost total agreement on every one of theirs. I think their scores were 52, 53, and 54 individually, and I think their team score was 53, which was the average of all their 3. I had another team that had 7 people. I checked on them after about 5 minutes of the exercise. They hadn't ranked a single one. They were still figuring out what their team name was going to be and who the captain of their team was, which I thought was pretty comical because, again, nothing to do with the exercise. So here's a team with too many ideas, too many probably chiefs on that particular team, and they weren't getting what they were supposed to be done. So the teams that in this particular case are the most successful are the ones that seem to be teams about 4 or 5 people, and again, a diverse group of people. So people, men, women, different ethnic backgrounds, different ages. Everyone's going to bring something different to this team exercise, and you're going to be able to, with your single team, as you're watching this happen, you're going to be able to identify the people that are more powerful than from some of the others, and you're going to take that opportunity to maybe temper them during the follow-up team activities. And some of the people that may have a lot to offer but they're pretty quiet, you're going to want to bring them out of their shell. So this exercise is going to help with that. Lastly, I usually will have one copy of the answers, and that's on the sheet on the right here, and I'll read that to each of the to the group as a whole. They'll write down that expert ranking in that center column. So they'll have their individual rank, the team rank, and then they'll have the expert ranking, and then we simply subtract the 2 different numbers from each other, and we come up with a individual score for each of the items. So say the sextant, if they ranked it number 7 and it was really number 12, they would simply have for the difference a 5. It doesn't matter which one's higher than the other, it's just the difference between the 2. They're going to add up all those differences and they're going to come up with a score. There's no better score than, well, there are better scores than another. The lower the number, the better, obviously. But relative to the team, what we're really hoping for is that the team score will be lower than any of the individual scores of the team members. So if you had team members that had anything between, say, a 40, 45, 50, 60, we want that team score to be lower than the lower number. If the team score is lower than the team average, where we take those 4 or 5 people and we average their scores, that's a pretty good team, but a team that's really performing well is going to outperform the lowest score on the team. Teams that score higher than their average are teams that really need some help. They haven't really brainstormed very well. Probably some of the people that have done fairly poorly on this exercise are ones that are really directing the efforts of this team and are taking that team in a bad direction. So a team that scores higher than the team average, significantly higher than the team average especially, is a team that really needs some help. So this is a great exercise to perform prior to going into a team project, because it really can be telling as to how well your team is going to perform down the road. Good luck, and look forward to seeing any questions if you have any.